We're going to take a quick look at Chapter 7. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's going to be looking at cellular respiration. Let's take a look at what cellular respiration is. It's the release of energy from molecules such as glucose, accompanied by the use of this energy to synthesize ATP molecules or make ATP. So this is what's going on inside of every one of your cells in your body. We're making ATP. So we show glucose plus oxygen yielding carbon dioxide and water as these two work together to release ATP. In aerobic cellular respiration, oxygen is required and it gives off carbon dioxide. There are two coenzymes of oxidation reduction reactions that are active during cellular respiration, and they are called NAD+ and FAD. Their job is to carry electrons from the cytoplasm or the mitochondrial matrix and carry them to the cristae of the mitochondria. We talked about coenzymes in the last chapter and their function. They each carry 2 electrons and 2 hydrogen atoms. You can see the diagram of this oxidation reduction reaction as given in your textbook. Let's take a look at the phases of cellular respiration. We're going to talk more in depth about glycolysis, preparatory reaction, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. This next picture is a good visual aid for looking at where these things happen when we're talking about cellular respiration. So we have glycolysis, which takes glucose to pyruvate, and it's happening in the cytoplasm, and those products are going into the mitochondria. The preparatory reactions in the cytoplasm and into the mitochondria, into the citric acid cycle, which occurs inside the mitochondria, and the electron transport chain, which occurs inside the mitochondria. Glycolysis is the breaking down of glucose, which is C6H12O6, into 2 molecules of pyruvate. So we end up taking one 6-carbon molecule and it gets split into 2 3-carbon molecules. This happens by oxidation, by removal of hydrogens released through enough energy to make 2 ATP when this happens. So glycolysis makes 2 ATP. In the preparatory reactions, pyruvate is oxidized to acetyl coenzyme A and carbon dioxide is removed in the process. So one 3-carbon molecule is broken into one 2-carbon molecule, and the prep reaction is going to occur twice because glycolysis produces 2 pyruvates. So this has to go through this cycle for one pyruvate and again for the second pyruvate that was produced from the splitting of one glucose molecule. The citric acid cycle, in brief, happens by acetyl-CoA being converted to citric acid, and it goes into the cycle. This is a cyclical series of oxidation reduction reactions that produce 1 ATP and carbon dioxide per every turn of the cycle. The citric acid cycle is going to turn twice because 2 acetyl-CoAs are produced per glucose molecule. The electron transport chain is a series of electron carrier molecules, and this is where we cash in and get a lot of ATP. Electrons are passed from one carrier to another, and as they move from a higher energy state to a lower one, the energy is released to make ATP. Under aerobic conditions, we should get 32 to 34 ATP per glucose molecule being produced. So it shows the highest level of ATP production in this process would be through the electron transport chain. And the electron transport chain takes high energy electrons and they give off energy and make ATP. That energy is used to make ATP. So we have high energy electrons and then low energy electrons because that energy is used to produce the ATP for the cell. Pyruvate is a very pivotal metabolite in cellular respiration. So if there's no oxygen available, pyruvate gets reduced to lactate in animals or alcohol and carbon dioxide in plants, and that's a process called fermentation. Fermentation is going to result in a net gain of 2 ATP per glucose molecule, which is not a great return. However, it's still a return of ATP even without oxygen being present. So that concludes the first section that just gives you a general overview of what cellular respiration is going to be about. And the next few sections are going to go in more detail. It is super important that you read your textbook when it comes to this. This is a concept that you have only hit on before and you know that it happens. We have to get in depth about it to prepare you for college. So you need to make sure that you read your textbook, and if you have any questions, make sure you ask them in class.